Hey guys, in this video, we're going to see how to use Flutter's HTTP package to make network requests and to consume a simple API using it. In order to start using HTTP package in your Flutter project, there are a couple of steps you'll need to follow. Step 1 is to go to pub.dev and get the Flutter package. Step 2 is to go to your pubspec.yaml file and to add it right below Flutter dependencies. Be careful of the indentation and add it, and with the version, Flutter will get the package for you. Step 3 would be to go to the API you intend to use and look at the resource it's giving you. I'll be using the JSON server to create a super simple server to interact with for this example. This is the shape of the data we will be interacting with. It has an ID, which is an integer, title, subtitle, and author, which are all strings. Step 4 would be to go back to your project and create a model that mimics the shape of the data you expect to be interacting with and manipulating. So in this case, I've created a class called a post that expects an ID, which is of type integer, and a title, subtitle, and author of type string. I've created a constructor for my class, and all of this are required. I have a simple function that allows us to basically use the API in our application. After you've created your package, the next step is to now start interacting with your API. I've organized my files such that we have this HTTP service that deals with all the simple operations we'll be carrying out today, and the main file, the model file, and this test.rs HTTP, just so that we can keep our main file clean. So let's just go through that first. So in the main file, all we're doing is creating a stateless widget, scaffolding it, and giving it this body. There's nothing much on the main file. In this test.rs HTTP dat file, I could probably do better naming of it. This is a simple stateful widget that has a variable of type future, which is a list of type post, and I've named it to-dos. And here we're interacting with the HTTP service. I'll get to that in a minute. So we're scaffolding this screen, adding an action button to it and giving it a body of the future builder. We're giving the future builder a future of to-dos, which is what it will use to determine if state changes, and what it's looking at this variable basically. And a builder function that will now asynchronously build out your UI as more data flows in. We're checking if the snapshot, which is the object that has our results from the API, if it has data, then we are storing that data in this variable here, just so that we don't have to repeat this everywhere. Then we're returning a list view.builder. If we do have data, we're returning a list view.builder. We're giving this account so that we avoid that error where it says like you're out of index bounds or something along those lines. And then we're giving it another function called an item builder, which takes in the context and the index that keeps tracks of where we are. The index also acts as a unique key for each part, like for each iteration or at each point you are in. And then we're just giving it a list style, and we're displaying our title and our subtitle. And then on the trailing, we have a row that has two children, basically two icon buttons, and I'm separating them with a size box. One item button is to edit the to-do, and the other item button is to be able to delete a to-do from your UI and from your API as well. If the snapshot has an error, then we just ask Flutter to tell us or to show the user what the error is. Perhaps this probably should be better handled, because sometimes the errors wouldn't really make sense to a user. Either way, while we're figuring out whether or not we have data or if we have an error, we are just giving a progress indicator so the user knows there's actually something going on here. So that's what's going on in the feature builder. And then the feature builder, as I mentioned, is interacting with this HTTP service file that I have here. This is a class I've called HTTP methods, and in it we are imported the .convert to allow easier decoding and encoding from JSON into JSON. The HTTP package itself is being imported over here, and the model that we're using. And this class, I'm defining the base URL we'll be interacting with. In my case, localhost 3000/posts. That's the base URI. When it comes to an API, as I mentioned in my last video, which I will link somewhere in the corner here, you have different verbs you're dealing with. There's get, which means get me all the resources you have. Add a post take this post of mine and add it to your list of stuff you have to deal with on the API. Update, here is something you gave me. I want to change this to this, so update it for me. Delete, I don't need this resource anymore. Please delete it. Assuming that you have the permission. So in this case, we're not tackling authorization or authentication, which is what will determine whether or not you have permission. This is a super simplified example of just basically how to interact with an API in Flutter. When I was doing this for the first time, it gave me a lot of issues and a lot of errors. It's not easiest thing to wrap your head around when you're learning Flutter. So when you're getting all the posts, you make a function called getPost. This is the function body. Now, like, this looks like a lot at first glance, but we'll go through it step by step. And then you call the http.get method, and then you need to pass your string. So you have the URI.pass, and then you pass it the string. This wasn't the case a few months ago, but right now you have to pass this string. And then here I'm just creating a variable called post. That's an empty list. So we're saying if this response from the API is status code 200, and I haven't yet tackled status codes in this video. I'll make a video on that soon. In the meantime, I will link in the description a video from the Flutter apprenticeship in which that part of status codes was very thoroughly explained. Moving on, so we'll take this response and we'll see the status code 200 basically means that everything went well and your request was completed successfully. So saying if this is the case, we're taking our JSON decode and then we are decoding the response.body and we're saving it in a variable called data. What do we want to do with data? We want to push data, because data is a list. We want to push data. We want to push all the elements in this data into post, but we can't do that directly. We have to create a post instance basically. So we say data that for each element in this array of data, we want to take our posts list, add onto it. And what are we adding onto it? We're adding onto it a post. So we instantiate post in here and we say the ID variable that we have already described in our model relates to this, title relates to this, subtitle relates to this. So now we have a list of actual posts, which is what this return type of this post now becomes a future, because it has to wait for all of these operations that are asynchronous to complete. And I will also link the asynchronous video somewhere in the video. So this means that we're waiting for a future result of this asynchronous operation, and that future result will be a list that contains posts, because that's just what we did here. And then we're returning the post. So our return type is this. If this doesn't go well or something happens, throw this custom exception where we just say we simply failed to load the to-dos. And this is a better error than the one where we just toString this actual server error, because literally it makes no sense to the user to do that. And then when you come to add post, again we say add post. Now if you're adding a post, you need to give the post to be added. So this function expects a post of type post. It's also synchronous, and when you get this post, we have to encode it back to JSON. So JSON.encode post. So now this post is in JSON, which is the language the API understands. Always remember that in this RESTful example. And then we are making the same a http.post, which is another HTTP verb we mentioned before. http.post, we're passing it the URL we want to post to. We are passing it something called a headers object, which for this, in the case of the JSON server, is just you specifying the content type to be application.json. And then we're saying the body of this request is this newly encoded post that we have here, which is now in JSON and the server can understand. Then we're saying if response.status code is okay, so if everything is okay, just return for me the response.body again in a different format, like we're decoding it back to how it was initially, and then throw exception if anything else happens. Again, another custom exception. On the update, it's basically the same thing we're doing. On update is still almost the same thing we're doing. We still need to pass a post to the update function to update it. We still need to encode it back into JSON so the API understands what information we're passing it. And we're still using HTTP packet with the put method. The difference is that when you're passing when you want to update a resource, you need to specify which specific resource you are going to be updating. We're passing it a base URL, and then we're taking the post.id, and we're saying that this is the unique identifier for this post. Same, we are passing the headers, and the body we're giving it the updated post, which is the post that's been encoded back to JSON format. And if everything is okay, give us back thing decoded to the original format that we had. And then if anything else happens, simply say that you're not able to update this resource so the user can try again. And when you're deleting, it's almost the same thing as an update operation, except you do not need to pass a body because the server already has that resource you're pointing to. It already knows what you're talking about. You still do need to specify which resource. In the delete post, all we do is pass it an ID. That's all. And then we say we want to delete base URL / this particular resource of this ID. If all is well, get us all posts. So that's my service class. So now we come to the test REST HTTP part, and we are focusing the functions here. So when it comes to our example application, we have this edit and delete and plus icon that allows you to add a post. Our delete function just takes in the ID that we passed to it, reassigns the to-dos, which is the variable that the future builder is listening to the results from delete post, which we have specified is, it going and getting all the posts again. And then we're setting states so that this is reflected on the screen immediately. When you go to add post screen, we have 2 more functions inside this stateful widget. An update post where we're passing it the post, and then we're just awaiting the result of http.update post. And a create post in which we're doing the same thing. We're getting the post, passing it along, and waiting for that result. On this widget we have a form, and I'm going to basically skip over a lot of this because the focus of this video is not on Flutter forms and we haven't covered that yet. Basically, this is just a form that checks if we have an active post, which is the post we were passing to it from here in the arguments. It just checks if we have that. If we have that, we say edit the post. If not, then it's a blank form, so create the post. What's important here is what do you do when you click the button at the bottom of the form. You check if the active post has an ID. If it does have an ID, that means it's an updating function that you need to call. So we create a new post, assign the ID to the active post ID, the title to the text and the subtitle, all of that. If we don't have an ID already, that means we are now creating a new post. So again, we instantiate the post class or the class post model, and here I'm just using random numbers for the ID, the title, the subtitle, and then we call create post. After which we navigate back to the page, the home. The function over here, we update the post to just pass the post to the HTTP update method which we saw, and I'm also going to link the code for this example if you want to look at it, make corrections, improve it, all that. And for the create, we also simply pass the post and call this and pass it. So the encoding or the decoding of the post back to JSON, all that happens inside this method. That's basically the steps. So step 1, you go get the HTTP packet. Step 2, you look at your API and the resource shape it gives you back. Step 3, you model that shape inside a class. Step 4, you create a service or you create methods that will talk to the API using the HTTP package. Step 5, you create an user interface to interact with your API, which is what the feature builder is and what the form is for. So to demonstrate the application we just built, this post, this is the edited post 2, we can edit it and say maybe new. If we do that, we get post new. We can delete it as well. Here we can add this post not so new, and we have that. We can add it over here, and you can see in this case it knows that this is blank, it's not pre-populated, so you can see new post. I seriously lack creativity today. You can save it, and that's our application. So that's the demo or the explanation of how we would use the HTTP package for simpler purposes. You can obviously build on this knowledge to deal with more complicated things, including authorization and authentication. We will get there in the future. In the next video, we'll take a look at the DO package, navigation, state. Please like the video if it gave you value, and you'll find relevant links in the description. I'll see you in the next one.